The water is my first love and one that I've been neglecting for a while now. Last year, I quit endurance sports cold turkey. No running, no cycling, no swimming. And I think I lost my identity a little bit. I think that's maybe also why climbing has felt so mentally tough. The stakes were quite high, and that sort of explains why I cried so much on the wall. This year, I'm trying to find out who I am in addition to climbing. And part of that means going back to old loves, but not always in exactly the same way as before. Which is how I ended up here, learning to scuba dive. Learning to scuba dive has lots of unique challenges. On land, breathing is automatic. Learning to breathe through a regulator underwater is a bit weird at first, but you get used to it so quickly. You get used to being able to breathe anywhere. When you're upside down, when you're at the surface, when you're deep below the waves. Your regulator is quite literally your lifeline down there. Which, of course, is why you need to be trained to respond to emergencies where your regulator gets pulled out of your mouth, or where you have to share air with another diver, or imagine your regulator gets broken and sends out uncontrolled streams of bubbles. And last but not least, getting to safety if you run out of air. Underwater, the moment you take the mouthpiece out, you're very aware that you can't breathe. The moment a regulator leaves your mouth, you're meant to breathe out in a steady stream of bubbles so that your pressure in your lungs doesn't become deadly if you suddenly ascend to the surface. This means that you're actively losing air while you're fumbling around trying to replace your regulator or share your buddy's air. Letting go of the regulator, even for this safety training, feels like letting go of life itself. Finding the pipe and inserting the mouthpiece again is easy in theory, but terrifying in practice. Similarly, sharing air with another diver is technically fairly easy, but it made my head explode. What do you mean I'm going to stop breathing from my lifeline and transition to breathing from yours? The mental challenges were an interesting and somewhat unexpected part of the learning journey. The next challenge was learning to deal with a free-flowing regulator. If a regulator malfunctions, it's designed to do so in one way, sending out a crazy stream of bubbles. When you're dealing with a free-flowing regulator, you're meant to drink the air from it. The analogy they use is like drinking water from a water fountain, but in reality it feels like sipping oxygen out of a geyser or something. It did not feel like it should work, but it did, and doing it successfully was kind of exhilarating. The final boss of my training was the emergency ascent. This is when you're swimming up to the surface without air. In theory, simple, but just the knowledge that the next time I might have to do this would be in a life or death situation made me freeze. I wanted to take the consequences of this drill seriously, but that made my performance so much worse. I failed my emergency ascent quite a few times. I wasn't able to hold my breath until I reached the surface. I took a moment and I tuned into my body, and I realized that I was completely exhausted. There was just so much gear and physics and terminology that my brain was completely saturated. I was teary and clumsy and overstimulated. Being able to see this in myself was useful, and I asked the trainer if we could redo the skill the next morning. After a good night's rest, I managed it on my first try. And let me tell you, all of the training was so worth it. The adventure scuba diving provides is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. Everything from the crazy boat ride through the break, to dropping off the boat backwards like in the movies, to floating around weightlessly was so cool. And the marine life is mind-blowing. I really liked all of the coral, the branchy ones, the wiggly brain ones, and the flowy crazy hair ones. The fish are cool too, and as are the turtles and the rays and the moray eels, but the corals really blew my mind. After 4 hours of floating through this colorful wonderland, my brain felt scrubbed clean. I guess it's sort of like meditation, right? Like just moving slowly, paying attention, and breathing deeply. But for about a week afterwards, the world seemed to be in HD. It had more color. I was happier and more grounded, and I was so much more present in my own skin. I may not have mastered climbing yet, but at least underwater, I finally learned how to breathe.